Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another season of No Consolations right here on the National Racing Network. My name is Chris Graham. It's a pleasure to have you joining us tonight. And alongside me for another season, my partner in crime, Mr. Justin Grosz. Justin, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Chris. Great to be back. I
Yeah,
think this is almost like the year anniversary of our first show. We're
it
getting
is.
close.
I was going to say we're pretty close to 1 year rolling these things, and all in all, not not a bad year we've had either, which is pretty cool. Whole lot of big wins and some neat guests, and we got a pretty good one tonight too.
Yeah, I think we probably have, was doing the stats before we got on here, one of the top five drivers in all of 600 racing in the Northeast. So it'll be pretty great to have Damon on here in a little bit.
Yeah, it's very cool. We'll definitely have a good time talking to the Stony Point Stud. That's for sure. Actually, he can hear us now. You've already got him on the line here, so we'll get him on shortly. But it was a very long off season, and then things have started to get a little. We're finally hitting a groove now, and it seems like we're already talking about end of the year shows.
Yeah, we've had all the big money shows over these last few weeks. And right now, everything's about to hit its stride as 2 weeks from now, we're going to be hitting Speed Week. So the year's coming by real quick. But it still feels like we still got a lot of racing in this year.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest things that we're going to see is the money's only going up. The Speed Week shows are kind of ridiculous in terms of what some of the payouts are growing to. But we'll talk about that one in a little bit here. Should we bring our guest on the line with us?
Let's do it.
All right, let's the wonders of live television here. Let's unmute our guest and welcome to the show our first guest of the year, Mr. Damon Paul. How are you, sir? Okay, we did unmute him. Damon, can you hear us? Oh. Hold on a second here, folks. The producer guy screwed up here. Let's add in the right piece of audio here. Damon, hold on 1 second on the line here with us. And now we should have you here. Damon, can you hear me? Okay, there we go. Are we better now? Damon, you got us?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you guys
Oh,
hear
my
me?
goodness. Yeah, now we can hear you. Now that the
All
producer
right,
guy's done
cool
screwing
deal.
everything up. So what's going on, man? How's the season been?
So far it's been awesome. We've just been chugging along, keeping our maintenance program on schedule, and at the racetrack, everything's just been falling in line, and we've been having a couple good finishes. We have 5 wins this year and a whole bunch of top threes and top fives and whatnot.
That's always a heck of a way to start the season when you know, you start to unload quick. Things are quick off the jump, and you've been running some pretty stout competition as well. Those early season races at Greenwood were some of the best 600 fields you'll see outside of Tulsa.
Yeah, and I think that Greenwood gives out the best track that it can every week. That's our home track, so it's awesome getting to race against everybody that wants to come out and race there. It's awesome racing, always three wide, super clean racing too. And everyone, all the competition, it's so stiff. It's hard to be super fast with all of them, but we've been doing a really good job this year, and we're hoping just to keep it up.
Yeah, you started the season out pretty strong, Damon. Even before all coronavirus was actually a thing, you started out the season pretty strong in Tulsa. Because I think after pretty much the first 2 days, you were the talk of the town that you kind of came out of nowhere and had a good shot of making all four of the big features at Tulsa.
Yeah, when we went out there, we didn't know really what to expect. We wanted to just go out there and make the features because we went out the year prior and we didn't make any features, so it kind of sucked. But at the same time, it was a great learning experience. And when we went out there, we wound up just doing really good in all of our heat races, and we wound up making our way to the front in most of them. And I wound up locking in 3 out of the 4, but we only raced the wingless A class and wingless outlaw because we figured save the car because we had to use both for winged and wingless. We had to use
Yeah.
the same car.
And typically, if you do good there, that's usually a good sign of things to come for the year. And I know it seems like the last few years that you've hit your stride in around May and June when the tracks start to slip because really everyone, especially in wingless, loves to run the top, but I have to say that you're probably one of the few drivers that are known to really run that bottom groove and use that to your advantage quite a bit. And it seems like that comes alive when the track starts slicking off when it starts hitting the summertime.
Yeah, I learned that's best learned in the slingshot, and that's what I started in. Or I started in flathead go-karts, but I ran slingshots for a really long time, and you're always on the bottom in those things, and I just learned very well from running Hamlin every week at Hamlin. It's not one lane, but it's in the slingshots you're running around the bottom. So it just taught me really well how to get down there and stay down there.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned the slingshots. When I got back in 600s about 4 years ago, I know Chris mentioned your nickname now is the Stony Point Stud, but coming in at that time, and I think when you're getting the 600s, I was hearing a lot that you were called the Ginger Larson at the time. And so I think there's a lot of expectations of you, and it seems like really over these last 2 years, you've really kind of lived up to that nickname. And at least you changed it a little bit more personally.
Yeah, that was a funny nickname. Kurt Bettler actually gave me that when I ran a asphalt race at Borgers in junior slingshot, and we wound up wrecking in the heat race or something, and I started last in the feature and wound up winning it. So that's how I got that nickname, and it gets stuck for a while. I actually have a sticker of it still in my car, but they call me Ginger Lars, or they call me Stony Point Stud. So I guess that's the one that's gonna stick.
Yeah, I think that's probably a more personal one to stick with you over time.
Yep.
And I know one thing that Chris and I are going to be probably talking about in a few weeks. So we've seen a lot of your dominance right now on the newly configured Bridgeport. You're the only person that's won there this year, as you've stolen both victories. You've been killing it at Greenwood, but really, I think probably one of the biggest shows for you this year is going to be Speed Weeks. How are you and the team getting ready, and how do you feel kind of going into that with that about a week and a half away?
Yeah, we've been trying to run as many of the tracks as we can, and just trying to get as much practice on them. And the new Bridgeport or the new Spirit is really awesome, and I think everybody should try to go out to it if they can. It's just awesome speed. The turns are banked. Everybody's right next to each other racing most of the time, and it's super clean racing. You can run the bottom, you can run the top, you can pretty much run anywhere. And both nights our car was just figured out, and it was just working on the track, and we were running the bottom actually. In the bottom, I followed Joey and Monty through the pass. Me and him started next to each other, and he showed me the bottom there, and then I followed him through and wound up grabbing the win there. But honestly, it's just a lot of just keeping our heads straight, making sure our program's on check, and just going to try to go out there and catch the title or a bunch of wins throughout the week. That's best too.
One of the things. Go ahead, Justin. Chris. I was just going to say, one of the interesting things about Spirit is when I talked to Matt Smith a little bit about it as we were getting ready to start the season, and I said, so what do you think of the new place? And he says, well, you can't catfish the bottom all night. It seems like that may be a little bit of a misnomer. There's really 2 or 3 grooves there, even with the added banking. That place looks like a blast to drive on.
Yeah, it's super fun, and I mean, it depends on the night. Every night it's different when you run there. So the first night it was around the top, but the second night the track was heavy, and you could pretty much run anywhere, and it was awesome. It was awesome racing, really super fun.
Yeah, and last year I know one of the bigger events at the Speed Week show actually at Bridgeport, you kind of came through the field and gave Alex a good run. And as we kind of talk about Speed Weeks, I know last year you got off to a hot start, just barely losing out at Path, just completely dominating at Linda's, but it seems like the one thorn in your side is Lenko. And this year, with that being the concluding event, and also the biggest paying event, have you been able to kind of refreshen on notes and start prepping for that race during Speed Weeks?
Yeah, that's the one track me and my dad are worried about, because we don't really race there much, and I think my best finish there is 4th. So if we're gonna want to catch the title, we're definitely gonna have to step up our game. We wish we could have made it out to the one wingless race that they had, but unfortunately I slipped at Action Track the night before, so we weren't able to get there. So that was our one and only practice chance at it. But we're hoping we're just going to do good throughout the week, giving us hopefully giving us a chance to not win. We don't making it so we don't have to win on the night at Lanco. But whatever it is, I really would like to learn there and get a lot better there, because that's one of our bad tracks that we can't really figure out yet.
One of the
Chris,
things,
you got
David,
any notes for him?
Well, yeah, I was going to say we saw it last weekend where the bottom was really starting to come in. I mean, you mentioned it. You're kind of high, wide, and handsome around that place. What is it about Lanco that is such a challenge? I mean, some of the best in the business. Tommy Koonsman. Now it was in Victory Lane, but Tommy Koonsman told me I don't really like the place. I can't get myself adjusted to it. What is it about Lanco that is so incredibly tough week in and week out?
To me, I believe that it's running right up against the fence. It's hard to have like a good battle with somebody, because you really have to throw a slider on them to try to pass them, and then usually it could cause wrecks. But there are nights where the bottom there is really fast. I've seen Kyle Spence do it a whole bunch, and but it's just one of those things that's kind of scary holding it wide around somebody as they're sliding up on the track. But it's just one of those deals, I think that's one of the scariest parts about it, because I can't really figure out how to keep it up against the fence while people are sliding up into me or around me, and the track gets slick in one turn from the sun, and the other side stays somewhat heavy, so it makes it challenging.
It almost sounds like it's kind of that ultimate driver's challenge track. For as much as people say that it's just big and fast for the micros, it's very, very technical, it sounds like, as well.
Yeah, it's very technical, and that's one reason why I also want to get better there, because I want to be as versatile as possible. I want to be a threat at every track we go to, and at Speed Week, looking into Speed Week, we're so far we're good, but Lanco is just the one show that we're kind of worried about. But me and my dad have been talking about it, and we've been figuring out some setup issues that we've had previously there, and we've been working on something good to come together and work out there.
Yeah, and it just so happens it's the one that's paying $5,000 to win, and makes it an $8,000 night if you can pick up a championship as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And with the purses throughout the week, it's a big week for us. So hopefully we can make something happen for sure.
Well, very cool. Well, before we let you go here, we got to ask you the question: who are the sponsors? Who you got to thank? Who's making all the racing happen for you this year?
I got to thank my dad, Casey, Think Fiberglass Racing, Dave Orange Race Engines, Hyper Racing, Evo Fuel Injections, best injections on the market. Honestly, they give you super power on the bottom. They give you lots of torque, and 600 Performance, and pretty much everybody else that just gets everything ready for us. We have a couple friends that like to help out throughout the week, but it's just pretty much it's a whole big group of people, and everybody has to come together to make it all happen.
All right, very cool, bud. Well, we appreciate you taking some time out on a Thursday night here. We know you're kind of getting ready for what the weekend's going to hold for you. What are your plans this weekend?
Saturday night we're running wingless at Greenwood, and then Sunday we're going up to Bridgeport or Spirit, and then Tuesday at Action Track.
There you go. That sounds like a full week. So good luck, and then we'll talk to you again, hopefully during Speed Weeks.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Damon.
All right, that is.
Have a good one.
Yeah, you too, bud. That is Damon Paul. They call him the Stony Point Stud. So, Justin, some interesting things that we heard out of Damon there. For a kid who seems like he's good everywhere he goes, it's always interesting to me to hear a driver say that I'm not good at this place. It just doesn't fit my style, whatever the rationale may be.
Yeah, I had those same issues. I think the first time I ever went to Lanco, I just got super lucky and had a great weekend. And then ever since then, it's just such a hard track to figure, because a lot of the tracks that run the 600s it's pretty easy to get real comfortable. But with that fence just kind of peering in at you, just kind of going into turn 1 or 2, like there's just really no kind of that sense of I can kind of ease into this or how hard I can push it. And I think really, if you look at a lot of stats from a lot of drivers, that it's really rare that an outsider comes to Lanco and wins. I know you talked about Tommy, where that was a rare occasion, but a lot of tracks like anyone can kind of go to and probably be pretty fast. But Lanco's one of those that like if you're not in there, you're not there in and out every week, or you haven't run there for a full season in the past. It's going to be a really tough challenge for you. So definitely the locals are definitely have the advantage for those big shows there.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things. I know I get it was prior to last season that they put the gates in turn 3 and turn 4. So they removed the blunt edges and one of the questions that we asked was, is that going to make guys braver a little bit going into 3 or trying to throw the big slider in 3 and 4? We didn't see it as much last year, but it looks like turn 3 and turn 4 is the hot spot there now. I wonder if some of that isn't because of, what Damon was talking about, how parts of it get sun and it really changes the complexion of the racetrack.
Yeah, and 3 and 4 is a pretty complex place to kind of throw a slider because 1 and 2 is really narrow, so you can kind of dive in and you'll just slide right up. But 3 and 4, if you really mistime that, like and someone's really running the outside, they're going to have a whole bunch of momentum and not be able to let up. And definitely from a bunch of videos last year, so that was some of the case. And there's some hot heads about some slide jobs towards the end of the season that interrupted some championships that were some bad sliders in 3 and 4. And I haven't gotten to watch as much this year, but kind of seems like that same thing is pretty evident. And I think that just is one of the tough things in wing racing because I think everyone has gotten to the point where we push the cars as much as they can, and everyone's so close. So you just got to pull those moves because it's really hard to pass wing in a lot of these tracks.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of the week in and week out story is we've had a couple of big pileups even because you're trying to make the ground up on the restart. You can come from back to front, but it's really easy to pick up 3, 4, 5 spots right on the drop of the green flag. It makes for really exciting racing for the fans in the stands and those that are watching here on the National Racing Network. I am really excited to see how this track plays out when it's time for Speed Week because the combination of the stout field, I can all but guarantee you're going to have some midget guys in 600s for that night. The payout's just too good to not think about trying that run. Do you think we're going to see a bunch of those guys?
I don't know a whole bunch. I mean, you may see a couple guys like I believe KT Kevin Thomas ran one of Hummer's cars out, I think, last week at Circus. So that may have been like a test run to see if he's going to potentially run it. I don't see a whole bunch of guys. You may see Andrew Laser try to pick up a ride because he's a local in the area. But I would probably say around 5 guys you'd probably see try to run both. But there's definitely going to be a lot of interesting parts about that show because, again, you get the rubber from the midgets, so that definitely kind of throws a little difference into it. And also this year we got the different spec tires, so we got to figure that out this year. That's what we've been testing out at Greenwood these last few weeks just to get ready for the Speed Week show.
That's going to be one of the interesting things, and the other one is track prep. I mean, you see a little bit of dirt fly at Lanco into the corners, but man, those midgets, they build a cushion around that place, and it does change how wide the racetrack is. You're talking about how you mistime it in 3 and 4. You're only talking an inch or two that you mistimed it by. Well, you're going to lose that inch or two in 3 and 4 as well.
Yeah, and it seems like every year for the USAC show, there's like one big downpour that just makes that track a little extra heavy for that night. And I think that definitely allowed last year where Spence introduced a lot of people to that the bottom groove can really work around there. And it seems like ever since he showed people around the bottom there, that's picked up for the rest of last year. And as you were talking about, we've seen more people run the bottom groove this year at Lanco than we've seen in years past.
Yeah, both the Elys have been down there. Brent and Nash, I mean, those guys, sort of like Damon, they'll run the bottom every chance they get. And it's been neat to see that groove come in. The heat races might not be the best, but by feature time, that racetrack has been absolutely outstanding this year. So kudos to Joe Keppel and his whole crew. But we got a bunch of other racetracks to talk about here. How about we do this? Let's take the quick commercial break here. Let's get that out of the way. And then we'll be right back. We're going to recap the start of the season, look ahead to Speed Weeks and the Nationals season coming up at the end of the year. You are watching No Consolations right here on the National Racing Network. Free Geek Pen is an electronics recycling center which specializes in restoring electronics to usable condition. They turn salvageable parts from donated equipment into working electronics for those on a budget. The best part is your old gear doesn't end up in a landfill. Free Geek Pen also does computer repair. Find them online at freegeekpen.org. Give them a call at 717-721-2494 or stop by the shop on Main Street in Ephrata. Think freegeekpen.org.
At 600cc Performance, our roots run deep in CC racing. A leader in fuel injection, dyno tuning, wiring, and diagnostics. With over 15 years of experience in building and tuning, you can count on us to get you to the winner's circle. Whether it is diagnostics, sales, or service, 600cc Performance is your source for everything CC racing. Find out more at 600ccperformance.com.
If there's one thing every car guy hates, it's cleaning the garage. Do you want to take most of the time and hassle out of that job? Then call Zone Garage of Eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Agnes and her crew will have your garage, shop, basement, or even your porch looking great all the time. With unique patterns and designs, plus the ability to incorporate your logo or any artwork, your space will never have looked better. Installation is done in 1 day, guaranteed, and Zone Garage offers a 20-year warranty on the top coat. Their coatings are durable, anti-slipped, and impact resistant. Give them a call at 570-856-6067. That's 570-856-6067 for Zone Garage of Eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey.
Put the keys down, Kevin.
But I'm gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
I've taken 25 selfies in the last 10 minutes.
26.
Yep, I'm definitely gonna call a ride home.
All right, everybody, welcome back here to No Consolations on the National Racing Network. My name is Chris Graham. It is a pleasure to have y'all joining us. Seeing a comment coming in from Bradley Brown, really hating that I'm not able to take on Speed Week this year. Stay well, brother. Bradley had a heck of a tumble in the 270s out at Lanco just a week or so ago. I guess 2 weeks ago. So he's got a little bit of some neck injury stuff going on. He'll be back next season, but rumor has it he'll be partaking in things from the broadcast booth this weekend. So hopefully we can talk Bradley into hanging out and doing some color commentary with us. Justin, we're back. We've had a very interesting start to the season. We've already got a couple of big money shows in, and I can't say that it's a surprise knowing how good our talent is, but once again, the Pennsylvania guys went out to the Midwest and took home a bunch of cash this past weekend.
Yeah, we've almost saw a sweep in the last 2 weeks. I mean, Alex almost had it down in US 24, and unfortunately got beat by probably one of the best in the business, Frank Flood. And then really at Circus, it was just all PA domination last week. with Kyle and Alex and Brian Carver and the whole bunch of those guys just completely just taking all the Midwest money back home to the East Coast.
Yeah, he hated the nickname, but he was Big Money Brian Carver. I don't know what we're going to call Spence other than a Brinks truck at this point. Back-to-back drillers, back-to-back non-wing world championships. I picked up a couple of wins last year during Speed Week and didn't take the crown. Is there anybody other than Kyle Spence that you would say is a favorite to win PA Speed Week at this point?
I mean, probably the big race right now is Alex, Alex Bright. I mean, like I said, he finished second in both weeks, won the Speed Week championship last year, so and already has a win down at Action Track and did it in a pretty dominating fashion. So it was interesting to see at the beginning of the year they didn't shine like you would think they would at Greenwood in those first few races, but once he swept the one night at Greenwood, they've been just kind of right there. I mean, it's not only really just Alex, but his brother Brendan as well as kind of also stepped it up quite a bit and pushed them.
Yeah, that's been one of the interesting ones to see. Is we hear a lot of talk about Alex Bright. Brendan might be one of the most underappreciated drivers in the 600 game at this point. He's a threat to win everywhere he goes. He just, and I don't even know how he's overshadowed, but he is overshadowed a little bit by Alex.
Yeah, I think it's always been that way. I mean, I ran midgets with both of them, and that was kind of always Alex. Ever, especially when Alex had that win at the Chili Bowl, it was Alex. But Brendan still ran pretty well and held his own. And now they're pretty much both in the same equipment at Hummer. And you saw Brendan kind of dominate early in the year, and Alex kind of keep up. So, I mean, that Hummer team is probably the top-notch team right now in 600. So. I think those two and whoever guest stars in their third car is always going to be someone to watch.
Yeah, that team's been really impressive to watch. The hyper armada that will show up at places that I'm sure we're going to see a ton of them during Speed Week. I don't even want to think about how many cars that Mike Dicely and the whole team over there at Hyper is going to be pumping out in the next couple of weeks here. But yeah, we're almost to the point where a lot of these rides are pretty well sealed. The only one I can think that's not locked in stone right now is the ride that Timmy Buckwalter was in.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I know the Greth family has had Timmy in that car for a long time, so it'll be curious to see if they just sideline it for a while or if they actually put someone in that car. But such a rough deal for Timmy. I was actually running the stats earlier, and on a per race basis, Tim Buckwalter had the best finish of any driver so far in the 2020 season. Before that, when you kind of look at field sizes and tracks, so rough time to kind of lose Timmy to a fortunate accident at Bridgeport last week.
He would have been kind of that 1A pick, right alongside Spence. Timmy's won, and I think every car he's driven this season, he's won in, which is really kind of unheard of when you think he's not bouncing from a 270 to a 600. He's bouncing from a 600 to a midget to a speedster to a big block to everything there is to run on dirt. Have there been many really versatile guys who are known for running the 600s like that, running the small cars, but they can go up and win in the big cars as well?
I mean, I think it's Timmy's biggest competitor at Action Track is probably Billy Pouch Jr. It's probably the other driver that really hops around quite a bit. I mean, Timmy at least kind of goes outside of Action Track from time to time with the 600, where Billy's pretty much stays home with that. But I mean, Billy's been probably one of the best drivers I've seen, at least for a longer span of time, really adapt to. When I used to run against him in midgets, he would run a midget and a modified in one night at Grandview, which are two completely opposite cars, and be able to run in the front both of them. And Timmy looked like this year was just finally figuring out the modified after a few tough years in it. So hopefully when he's able to come back, he'll kind of pick up where he left off this year.
Yeah, that's been one of the things is, now Timmy didn't get hurt in a 600, but we have a couple of guys that have gotten hurt, and we've seen a lot of junked race cars on dirt this season. What do you think we can attribute that to? I mean, it's not like these guys forgot and girls forgot how to drive a micro or any car. Yes, the off season was long, but I don't know what we can attribute that to. that we're seeing a couple of guys get hurt and a ton of wrecked race cars.
I mean, jokingly, I want to say it's a few extra months of iRacing is what caused a lot of this. You and me both did a decent amount of broadcasting and hosting races, and we saw some very ambitious racing on iRacing, and it seems like a lot of that may have translated to the real world. It's always a tough thing. I mean, all the older drivers are going to say that it's attributed to all the young drivers that are in the sport. And you see that from time to time, just young drivers just making bad decisions. But I think one of the things that we've also seen some bad wrecks at Greenwood Valley this year is just the discrepancy in field, where you'll have 10 to 12 real fast drivers, and then the last 10 cars are just a half a second off. And then when you hit lap traffic, you just have lap cars that just don't know what to do and kind of just drive into the leaders and just cause some big wrecks. So, and I mean, early on, it was just everyone just wanted to go. I mean, because at the time when Greenwood was opening up, you really didn't know how long we were going to be able to race for. Was it going to just be like open from week to week, or were we going to get shut down? So I think a lot of that ambitiousness definitely caused some wreck cars earlier on in the year.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think there was a fair amount of, I guess, carnage might be the right word. You had that, like you said, that early season, the bugs coming out, the stuff that you normally see when every track opens up at once. We had one track open up, and I'm going to say a big kudos to Jerry and the whole team up there, because those first two shows, I mean, we put them here on NRN. You were talking almost 200 cars in the pits across multiple classes. That was the shot in the arm that the sport needed at the micro level. Some of the bigger tracks had opened up, but those guys really did a great job. And they're seeing the benefit of that. They're still generating a lot of headlines. The racing at Greenwood's been great this year.
Yeah, and it's the tough thing is for Jerry. I mean, I've now probably run Greenwood. It's pretty much my home track for the last 3 years, and Jerry's always going to give you a great surface. There's very hardly going to be ever a time where you're bouncing in and out of ruts. It may be a little dusty, but there's no track in Pennsylvania that you're going to not go to that's not a little dusty. So I think he took a little bit of bad press because the races went a little long and it's a little bit dusty, but I mean, to handle 200 cars on a night where you're not, I mean, that's almost 4 times the amount of cars, 3 to 4 times the amount of cars we're used to, and having to adapt track prep to that. I mean, I give him all the kudos that you could possibly do. And I mean, we're still savoring car count, but I think really right now you're starting to see at a lot of tracks that the heat is starting to kind of detract a lot of guys from coming out. And then also just one of those things is you just have too many 600 tracks that's just really spreading out a lot of these fields.
Yeah, I could agree with that wholeheartedly. We have good car counts, but when you start spreading out over 4 or 5 racetracks a night that are all within 3 hours of each other, you're going to sacrifice car counts one place for another. Seeing a couple of comments here, Nick Reichard, Bradley Brown, I think, said it best. No point seasons. People are just racing for wins and money. That may play a part in it. Where you used to think, I'll take 5th tonight, I'll take 6th tonight, that's going to get me in the top 10 in points. You don't have that. You just want the extra $20 that's dangling in front of you. I know you as a driver, the points don't enter your head when you're in the car, but it has to play a role somewhere.
Yeah, and I think at this time, this time of the year, like some drivers are. I see Michael Thompson's already up to like 25 races this year, but at this point, like you're at usually 20 to 30 races, and for most of us, we're only at about 10 to 12 races. And myself, I made some stupid decisions early in the year that probably was just delayed and seat time of. Where I tried to win a heat race and took a tire out in the infield tire out and ended my night, and there was no reason to try to win a heat race. And I think we left Damon unscathed there of I think probably the most popular wreck of the year, where he was leading and had the best car at Action Track that hit an infield tire on the restart and flipped while leading there. So I think you do see some uncharacteristic mistakes, but I think at this point we're used to having a bunch of races, and like a lot of these guys and girls still haven't had a lot of seat time yet this year.
Yeah, it's been fun, and actually Bradley seeing his comment, lots of equal cars. I think that may be one of the biggest things. The You made mention about the Hummer team that the Brights drive for. That wasn't necessarily the top ride to be in. That team has picked up speed this season. There's several others that are doing that as well. You're not seeing 5 or 6 cars that have a shot. It's not the Hanley and Rutherford show at Lanco anymore. You've got 8 cars that could realistically win week in and week out, and we're seeing that at every racetrack.
Yeah, and I think we've also seen a lot of the younger drivers that have been around for the last 2 to 3 years really start to hit their strides this year. I mean, opening night, I definitely probably if I had to place some bets on who's going to win opening night on Lanco, I definitely probably wouldn't have picked TJ to win that opening night. And just as I mentioned, Mike Thompson, he's already got 5 or 6 wins this year, which I think is already like 3 times the amount of wins that he's had like in his career in the 600. So it's just kind of upping everyone's level, and no one's really getting out of 600s. It's for motorsports, the payout, like you really can't beat it. So now you have the stream of new drivers coming in, and the equipment's getting better, they're getting better, and like you said, I mean, it just makes competition that much closer and that much tougher.
Yeah, and we're seeing that coming up with Speed Week. Some of it, I think, sort of kicked off with what Danny Serrano did in starting the skyscraper and making that a big celebration of the small cars at a big place like Bridgeport. Lanco is doing the payouts. The Linda's National Open has always been a great payout structure. We're just now backing those payouts up into the season. Lanco's running for 500 to win every night. Or just about every night anyway. You can do very well as a 600 driver, and you can hit 4 tracks a week at this point now as well. I don't think we can discount that either.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's been really hard with coronavirus, like messing this whole schedule up, is it feels like there's a race on every night. Like as we're talking now, there on the Thursday night we have a NASCAR race and a World of Outlaws race. And then, as Damon was talking, on a Tuesday night, we're going to have races on Action Track. Or pretty much next week, you could probably, I think, run Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. And there's really no place in the country where you can do this amount of racing. Like even hotbeds like in Oklahoma and California, they have good drivers, but they got 2 tracks to pretty much pick in a lot of those places. And here you have 8 in a span of 3, or 8 to 10 in a span of 3 days. And like you said, like even a place like Airport, which didn't even really run 600s a few years ago, has been getting good car counts. They pay 500 to win now, as long as they get a full field. So the tracks are definitely stepping their game up to get and attract the best drivers to come.
And I think the next logical step in that is the 600s become that very logical feeder series. Maybe not straight to the Outlaws, but you're seeing that path that guys like Joey Amantia and Kyle Spence, Christian Bruno are taking, where you can make the jump from a 600 to a 360. You can get into a wing 305 or a wing super sportsman. There is a very logical progression where if you wanted to make the progression in NASCAR, you've got to go down south. You have to leave here. If you want to make that progression in IndyCar, you've got to move to the Midwest. You can go from the Northeast and you can be competitive in a 410 in a handful of years potentially for some of the really talented guys.
Yeah, I mean, it may have been really the first big race this year, but Brock Zierfoss used to run Linda's every Friday night. I think won a track championship there, and pretty much beat the first won the first outlaw, or not outlaw, maybe it was an all-star race, but really first outdoor race since the coronavirus. And I mean, he's been one of those. I think he pretty much went from 600 straight to 410s, and it takes a few years, but I mean, nothing I think gets you better prepared than a 600. I talk to my dad a lot that I think the biggest mistake when was not going into the 600s and going straight from 270s to midgets, because just running the 600s now, there's so many similarities to running a midget or just a higher power car that you learn a lot of those basics that you don't learn in like a 270 or an outlaw car or a slingshot, that it really teaches you these principles that you need to be successful in bigger cars.
That's one of the interesting things. We're actually going to be up at Snydersville Raceway on tomorrow night. They've got the PA Wings coming in. It's the Outlaw Kart Series, very similar to what they're running down south and out west. It's really neat to see the development where you can watch a driver go from 6-7 year old kid and a quarter midget, and they progress very quickly. They're in an outlaw kart by the time they're 8 or 9. You're talking a 125, a 4-stroke, something along those lines by the time they're 10 or 11. All of a sudden, you're 12, 13 years old. You've got 8 years under your belt, and you're ready to move up to the 600s.
Yeah, I think a lot of these like new divisions have. I grew up running go karts. A lot of people ran quarter midgets, but a lot of these new divisions have pretty much like crippled those divisions because, you're behind the curve if you're still in a quarter midget at 10 years old. It's like you're wasting time that you could be chasing. You could be in an outlaw. There's a bunch of 600 drivers, especially with the restricted season or restricted class, that I think you can run a 600 at 12 years old. It's always been common that you could be in it for 14. So you're in a go-kart to 8 or 9, run an outlaw kart for like a year or two, and then move into a 600. That's the progression that people are really going to now. And it gets people started a lot younger, but the availability is there and the racing's a lot better, and there's at least a payout there tied to it as well.
I think that's one of those things that plays into our discussion we just had a couple of minutes ago about seeing junked race cars and some of that stuff. A 600 is not a joke to get into one of these things, especially at Greenwood, Lanco, some of these bigger racetracks where you're really hammered down. Do you think that lack of experience, it's in some respects it's a changing of the guard, but are we changing that guard too quickly, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, especially when you have a driver that young, it is the parents' responsibility to kind of understand what they're putting their son or daughter into. If you're 12 or 13 and go into like a track like Greenwood or Lanco and sending someone out for the first time, like those are two tight bull rings that probably shouldn't be your first time in the 600. Like maybe go to Path Valley or Trailway where the tracks are a lot bigger. Not trying to put anyone down, but the competition's a little bit less at those tracks than it is at Greenwood Valley and at Lanco, and get your feet wet. Like don't go to a track where you're going to be going almost 70 miles an hour in a fifth of a mile. And I think that's just like one of the things. It's always going to happen. They're going to throw their kids in to get their feet wet and tear up a lot of stuff, but you just have to have people be a little bit smarter about where they put their kids to kind of start. But like I said, that's me sound like an old man now saying these kind of things. And a lot of the accidents I've seen this year, it's not really young drivers related or anything. I think it's a lot of it of, as Bradley said in the comments, everyone's just racing for those extra few dollars and potential just kind of some gaps in performance of teams.
Yeah, that's where we're really going to start to see the cream rise. If you really put some thought into it, it is not inconceivable to think that you could see 140 to 160 cars over the course of Speed Week. Then reality starts to set in and you say, well, yeah, but some of these guys are not going to run it because they're just not ready yet. It's not worth the tow. It's not worth the entry fees when you're competing against the best in the country in a 600. What do you think we're going to see in terms of car count then for Speed Week? It's going to be big. There's no question about that. Every night of Speed Week has been huge.
Yeah. I know I think it's only Action Track. Action Track has a cap on how many cars can pre-enter, but I don't know if there's a cap on the rest of the series. I think that'll be something we have to get Austin to give us a final word on. But I think last year we pretty much averaged 75, 80-ish. I think the car count was maybe a little bit lower at like Linda's. I think that was pushing like 60, 65. But you're probably going to see that. I was already seeing today that one of the top drivers in the Midwest, Ryan Timms, who's got a few wins out Midwest, that he's coming out for 4 nights. And we saw a few drivers last year, so I think you'll start to get to see some of them. I think we've talked in videos past that we do see a limited amount of people from the West Coast come here because of our motor rules are different than it is outside of the rest of the country. But I would say that I'd be shocked if you don't average 65 a night.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some very big car counts. And the way the schedule for Speed Week lays out this year is pretty interesting. And Austin or Mike or any of the guys at Hyper, if you're watching, we would like to have Austin on the show next week. Austin, I'll be reaching out to you probably tomorrow. We kick things off at Spirit, which is unless you've run there this year, it's going to be completely new, higher banked. The setups are different. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of these teams potentially not run home base just to try to get some test laps in down there.
Yeah, and I think I haven't seen the whole schedule for the night, but it'll be interesting because I believe on the smaller, I guess technically Spirit, the 600s are the only cars that are running on that track, and then the midgets are going to be running on the bigger track. So there's not going to be a lot of rubber on that track either, where there may have been a little bit more in years past. So I think that will definitely play a bunch into it. And it's weird to see that was the concluding show of last year's Speed Week, and now this is going to be the opener this year. So, and you only have really this Sunday to run it, so people only really had 3 chances to run it before Speed Week actually starts.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest thing about that. If there was a chance to test it, it's going to be this Sunday. And actually, that one's also a little bit goofy because it's not paired with the midgets. The midgets, I'm almost positive, are running I forget what night it is. The midgets are running with the big blocks on the 3/8. So I'm not sure who they're pairing the 600s with for Speed Week. That may even just be a 600 270 kind of regular show for Bridgeport. We talked about them. Then you have places like Path Valley, some of those. It's a lot of driving for these race teams. You're doing as much of a haul as the national teams are doing with the midgets.
Yeah, it's a long week. I mean, right now we're committing to run the latter half of Speed Week to run Path Valley, Greenwood, and Lanco, and that to us is going to be a stretch to run 3 nights in a week. So I don't know how the guys and girls are going to do it for 5 days. So it's not like we're doing 5 nights in a row at the coolest part of the season. It's hot. It's a hard thing to wake up if you run 23rd the night before, go outside, work on the car, and then try to bash your head in to try to make a Miller 70 car field. It's as close as we get for a lot of these drivers to like the Outlaws, but that kind of gives you that 5-day stretch of what it's truly like to be a real-time race driver.
Yeah, you have the Tuesday night off, and that's when Linda's is going to run their unsanctioned show. I would anticipate a pretty solid car count for that one because, in all reality, you're only going from Spirit to Action Track. Action Track to Greenwood Valley is not that crazy of a tow. Getting to Path Valley is the tough one, where you're really getting out there to Path, and then you're right back up to Lanco again. It is a lot of mileage, but there is a great variety of racing that week.
Yeah, and I think they paired it together pretty well. That you kind of get a big track, small track, big track, small track. So you do kind of get that variety. Because I think that hurt our count a little bit. Because like Path Valley and Linda's are pretty much, I would say, the hardest tracks on the 600s, and those were back to back last year. And I think that hurt Linda's car count a little bit this year. So hopefully that variety will kind of keep car counts up. Hopefully keep cars intact for the whole time as well. And I think another bigger thing to kind of keep into that's definitely going to play a bigger thing that has in years past is the spec tire rule, where in years past, especially how bad Linda's got last year, cars were having to put brand new tires on every time they went onto the track and having to guess the right compound. And now that guesswork is out of it this year. So that's definitely going to play a hand in, especially like a track at Greenwood Valley where you pretty much have the softest right rear you could put on, and now you're going to put a spec tire on for a lot of these drivers. So a lot of these setups are also going to go out the window as well.
That was one of the things. Actually, Bradley mentioned it in the comments, and very cool that he's feeding information to us here. He thinks that tire rule may hurt car count a little bit because you're going to have to buy the tire for only a handful of nights, and you're going to end up needing multiples of them. So I would imagine it's going to benefit some people, but there's a lot of drivers that may say, you know what, we'll take the night off. We'll run the Linda's unsanctioned race, and then we'll come back. We'll pick up the latter half of the week, that kind of stuff. It'll be interesting to see how that spec tire rule really affects the racing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little overhyped about how people are kind of blowing it out of proportion. That's going to hurt car counts and whatnot. I mean, if you're, there's probably about 40 to 45 teams that are committed to run the whole thing. And so if you're committed to run 5 nights, like, you're going to buy the tires that you need. Because you're going to have to buy right rears anyway. So you can pretty much know that whatever right rears you go through, it's like you were just going to probably burn those off anyway. I know it's like a tough thing for us. Like, we're cautiously kind of playing it night by night because I don't want to buy 5 right rears and then all of a sudden one night gets rained out and now I got to burn 4 right rears off at Lenko to make it kind of justifiable, because otherwise I have a couple extra tires just sitting around then.
Yeah, that was one of the things, and actually I had heard from a couple of different manufacturers, not necessarily with regards to the micros, but there were even issues of manufacturers getting tires made at the early points of the season. Do you think that there's the potential for an issue there with regards to a spec tire rule, or hopefully are we past that point now where supply should be pretty good?
I think we're good. I mean, for all the crap that Mike and Hyper got for kind of instilling this rule, I mean, he's been pretty adaptable about saying that he'll swap tires with people. I mean, my dad, I think, was picking up parts down there a couple weeks ago when they took the delivery of all those tires, and they're pretty much, their whole stock room was filled with right rear. So I think there should be more than plenty to go around.
That's kind of comical that you have to plan for the worst case scenario and hope you don't need them. That's a whole lot of tire that is going to get used somewhere. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the course of the week. What do you think is the biggest unknown as we head into the late season, ignoring all the pandemic stuff and all the potentials of, government deciding that we're going to shut down again? But in terms of the on-track product, what is the biggest unknown as we start to get into Speed Week and then big money season?
Yeah, I think one thing that is still a little bit leery is there's a lot of tracks that did a lot of reconfiguration over the off season and didn't really get a lot of time to kind of practice like what the prep is going to look like. I mean, I saw a lot of people complaining at Spirit at the test session that the track was bumpy, and but ever since then the track, I've heard only but great things. I heard Linda's was horrible the first night. It's gradually gotten better. And I mean, at this point, I mean, they've gotten 10 to 12 races to figure out what the prep needs to look like for certain conditions and for a certain amount of cars. So I think that's the only thing, because I mean, Bridgeport will have 3 races on it. Action Track may have 4, maybe 5 races on it before Speed Week. So I mean, a lot of these tracks have had less than 5 shows on it leading up to Speed Week, and it's a different animal to have 30 cars running your track versus 70, 80 cars running it, and how it's going to adapt is going to be a huge, I guess, token to kind of see who can adapt the best to it.
Yeah, one of the other things that I think is interesting is Action Track lost the race this week. They rained out last night and decided to not utilize the rain date tonight. Next week, they're moving to Tuesday. Do you remember if that was pre-scheduled that way, or is this a move away from potentially some of the competition on a Wednesday night?
Yeah, I know for the last few years, I know Action Tracks had to get creative, because I know with the town, they're only allowed, they can only run so many shows, so they book a whole bunch of dates because they know some of them are going to get rained out. because I think they're allowed like 15 shows a year. So they book 25 or something, knowing that they're going to get rained out. So they've gotten really creative because they've had to. But I get confused when action tracks are running anymore. I know they were Sundays for a while. Now they're Wednesdays. Now they're Tuesdays. So I can't even figure out. And I think that's like one thing we'll have to talk for another topic is just like track PR. As I think been one of the biggest issues in 2020 is just like when are tracks racing has been the tough thing to figure out this year. And that's like the perfect point with action tracks. Like who knows what day of the week that they're actually racing on.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've found challenging in some of the promotional work that we assist Lanco with. You never know what the next mandate's going to be. You never want to jump too far ahead. You can't promote more than a week or two in advance. It really is difficult to put things together week in and week out. It's not like the days of old where your schedule was done in, December or January, even with your sponsors and theme nights and all that kind of stuff. We're putting the good racing on. I think that's the next step for micro sprint racing is start playing that card that says we're truly AA baseball. People love going to the Reading Fightin' Phils or the Trenton Thunder or name your AA team because it's inexpensive, family fun, the whole bit. We, as a collective, I think, promoters across the board really have to start stepping up our game.
Yeah, and especially as we said, I mean, on a Saturday night, drivers have the choice of like 8 places to go to. So you got to make it attractive for the drivers to go to, but also the fans to go to, because not only can fans go to a 600 race, but they can go to a 410 or a big block show. So we kind of have to earn that dollar a little bit harder.
Yeah, actually, seeing one of the comments coming in from Brian Keller on YouTube. Tuesday night is just due to a big block show at Bridgeport on Wednesday night. The Super Dirt Car Series is opening up their 2020 slate at Bridgeport with a 100-lapper on Wednesday. So understandable that Doug Rose does not want to be in 2 places at one time. One of the things that I had not a big concern about, but it was a thought that entered my head this offseason with all the work that went into reconfiguring, basically eliminating 3 layouts at Bridgeport and building 2 new ones. I know the quarter is still there, but that changed a lot as well. Would Action Track kind of not get as much attention? All in all, the car counts have been very good. The racing has been very good. The promotional side has been the same as it always is. All in all, Action Track really is doing pretty well, other than now losing a date to rain.
Yeah, I mean, that track really just has everything going for it. For the most part, it's the only thing going on in town on that night. I mean, Shell Hammers has tried to step in and come on Wednesday nights, so it's actually worked, I think, a little bit more in Action Track's favor that it's kind of been on variably different nights. And I mean, also the perfect thing, like it's in pretty much the best location that you could put a 600 track of where people are located. Like if you run Hamlin, it's just a quick shot down. I guess that would be 80 down. If you live in Jersey or in Philly area, you can get pretty much over by the turnpike. So it's so easy for a lot of these drivers to get to. Where like Olinda's, like if you live too far north, like you're just not going to make it 3 hours on a Friday during through traffic. So as long as they don't aggravate everyone, they keep a good product going, which Action Track I think has done for the last 5 to 6 years. I don't think that we'll see their car count really drop off anytime soon.
Yeah, it's all in all, we've had a fantastic season of racing so far. A lot of different winners, some people winning in places that you might not expect, which has been really cool to see. And you never know who's going to show up where with some of these tracks not racing for points. It's been fun. We've got a ton to look forward to, and I can't believe it. We're already to the 9 o'clock hour here. Anything else that you want to get in before we wrap things up here?
No, I think it's great to be back in the show. Like we said, it's probably about our 1-year anniversary. And just for those, newsroom is still going. We have our email subscription where we send 2 emails out a week to kind of give you a preview and a recap of what's going on. and that all goes to the newsroom point standings, which will reward right now the top 10 drivers in points in the 600 series this year, with an aim to at least pay about $750 to the winner of that this year, to kind of keep that point standings going that the US 600 had going for the last few years. So it's all available on newsroom.com under subscribe. I believe it's 12. Yeah, it's 12. It's bad that I don't know the pricing. It's $12 for the year, and you get 2 emails a week. So please support, and we'll be at Greenwood Valley on Saturday. So look forward to seeing many of you there.
Yeah, that's we get the emails every couple of times a week, and the content is still really good. It's in a little bit different format, and in all reality, the money that's really coming in is just passing through to the drivers. As Justin said, he's kind of picking up where the U6SA point standings and point funds have kind of left off. The other big points fund that is not tied to a racetrack is the Race Chasing for Drivers and Fans Fund. Make sure you look them up on Facebook. You can search for Race Chasing for all drivers and fans. They're actually doing a couple of sticker promos. If you buy a Race Chasing sticker, that money goes right into the sticker fund. That helps pay the point fund. That helps pay out some of the cash awards on whatever night of the week it is that the race chasers are out and about at the racetracks. And we've been doing between 8 and 10 weekly awards at Lanco, $25 a piece, and it's all given out to the drivers in a variety of ways. So make sure you look them up and find the race chasers, see how you can support them. Actually, I believe Cliff Bryan Jr., a 125 four-stroke driver, has a 1-point lead over Billy Pouch Jr., who's, I think, scoring the big block this year. So that's kind of neat, too, is it's really spreading out drivers from all different levels of dirt racing. So like we said, take a look for them. Make sure you find that one. Other than that, you will see us Saturday night live from Lanco's Clyde Martin Memorial Speedway. It is Clyde Martin Memorial Night. 35-lap features, $750 to win, $65 to start. You got to be a club member to run that night. It's all made possible by Gold Rush Trailer Sales. You can find them online at goldrushinc.com, and you can see that live broadcast coming up this Saturday night, and then we're into Speed Week. A whole lot of racing coming up, and you'll be able to see at least the 600s at Lanco, and I'm very specific in saying that. 600s at Lanco, you will see every lap. Those cars are on the racetrack live and for free right here on the National Racing Network. So for Justin Grosz and our guest Damon Paul, we want to thank you all for tuning in with us here tonight. We look forward to seeing you next Thursday night here for another episode of No Consolations. Have a great night, everybody.
Free Geek Pen is an electronics recycling center which specializes in restoring electronics to usable condition. They turn salvageable parts from donated equipment into working electronics for those on a budget. The best part is your old gear doesn't end up in a landfill. Free Geek Pen also does computer repair. Find them online at freegeekpen.org. Give them a call at 717-721-2494 or stop by the shop on Main Street in Ephrata. Think freegeekpen.org.
At 600cc Performance, our roots run deep in CC racing. A leader in fuel injection, dyno tuning, wiring, and diagnostics. With over 15 years of experience in building and tuning, you can count on us to get you to the winner's circle. Whether it is diagnostics, sales, or service, 600cc Performance is your source for everything CC racing. Find out more at 600ccperformance.com.
If there's one thing every car guy hates, it's cleaning the garage. Do you want to take most of the time and hassle out of that job? Then call Zone Garage of Eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Agnes and her crew will have your garage, shop, basement, or even your porch looking great all the time. With unique patterns and designs, plus the ability to incorporate your logo or any artwork, your space will never have looked better. Installation is done in 1 day, guaranteed, and Zone Garage offers a 20-year warranty on the top coat. Their coatings are durable, anti-slipped, and impact resistant. Give them a call at 570-856-6067. That's 570-856-6067 for Zone Garage of Eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey.
Put the keys down, Kevin.
But I'm gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
I've taken 25 selfies in the last 10 minutes.
26.
Yep, I'm definitely gonna call a ride home.